4.5 years ago, I was a climate change skeptic. Perhaps I listened to too much Fox News, but I simply refused to look at the data that was right in front of my eyes. And perhaps surprisingly, perhaps embarrassingly, I didn't join Interface because of our commitment to sustainability. I did join Interface because of this man, Ray Anderson. Ray had a huge influence on my life, and unfortunately, I never met him. Ray was the founder of Interface. In 2001, I was the Chief Innovation Officer of the Coca-Cola Company, and the CEO, Doug Daft, asked myself and a few other people to go out and study purpose-driven companies because we had just laid off about 10,000 people at Coca-Cola. The company was in a funk, and we had to recreate the spark of the company. The very first company that we went to study was Interface. Unfortunately, on the day the team went over there, I was out of the country. But I went on to practice the things that Ray taught us about how to run a purpose-driven company. One of the things he taught us is you have to earn the right to pursue your sense of purpose. Earning the right means you have to have a successful business. You have to deliver top quartile financial performance in order to reinvest in the things that really make a difference in the world. Unfortunately, Ray died in 2011, and his company just flatlined. No top-line growth, no earnings per share growth. And so I really joined the company to help Ray's company get back on track and to be healthy again. We are marking the 25th anniversary this year of Interface's journey in sustainability. In 1994, Ray had that spear in the chest moment when a customer asked, "What was your position on sustainability?" And we didn't have one. He wrote these words 25 years ago. And he also wrote these words, "To become restorative through the power of influence." So over the last 25 years, we have been on a journey to have no negative impact on the environment. And the goal was to do that by the year 2020. Now, Ray was a bit of an unlikely hero in this whole story because Ray was an engineer, and when he started 25 years ago and wrote those words, he had no clue on how to climb what he called Mount Sustainability. But like a good engineer, he developed a pathway. We called them the 7 fronts. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but he created the pathway to get to where we are today. And the numbers behind this are actually extraordinary, what we've done over the last 25 years. You know, an 88% reduction in our water use, a 91% reduction in our waste to landfill, 96% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Today, globally, we're a manufacturing company. We have 7 manufacturing locations all around the world. 88% of the energy we use is from renewable sources. And we've reduced our carbon footprint by 66% over the last 25 years. If Interface can do this, anyone can do it. And if anyone can do it, everyone should do it. In addition to the progress we've made, because this mission that we were on, we called it Mission Zero, was largely to do no harm. But we also have this amazing ripple effect where companies from all over the world have come to engage in a conversation with Interface. Companies like Walmart and Apple and Unilever. And so we do believe that through the power of influence, we have begun to have a restorative impact in the world. And I do believe that if Ray were here today, he would be so proud of the progress that we've been able to make as a company. Sorry, it's a little emotional. I'd say clearly today, we live zero. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. These are some of the most renowned sustainability experts in our lifetime. Janine Benyus, Paul Hawken, Bill Browning. Those people hadn't been together since Ray's funeral. I brought them together in the fall of 2015, shortly after I had joined the company, because we were so encouraged that we were going to be able to deliver on Ray's commitments, to have no negative impact. And so, honestly, I brought them together. I was kind of expecting a high five, a pat on the back, like a way to go, Jay. But instead, I got a very stern lecture. And that lecture, particularly from Paul, was, Jay, this is great, very proud, but Interface is the type of company that takes on the world's greatest challenges, and you have to step up and do more. And I was humbled, and I was taken back and confused. And so I said, Paul, here's what I'm willing to do. I need to go back and understand what was in Ray's head and what was in Ray's heart when he started us on this mission. Because if we're going to take on something new, we have to know that we as Interface could do that. And the words that we wrote, they may seem like strange words, but we need to know the why behind the what. Mission Zero was a great what, but it wasn't a great why. Our why, our purpose at Interface is to lead industry to love the world. I don't have time this morning to go into those words in detail, but they were very provocative. Can you imagine me going around the world talking about love in the workplace? Northern Ireland was the worst, by the way. They did not want to talk about love in the workplace. So Paul, Janine, Bill challenged us to take on global warming, which seems very daunting for a $1 billion company. We're a small company. In 2016, we launched Climate Takeback, and it was built around this science, which is from Johan Rockström. I won't go into it in detail, but we simplified this science down to this. We have to do 3 things to reverse the impact of global warming. We need to stop emitting carbon to the atmosphere. That's the top of that. We call that Live Zero. Secondly, we have to help nature breathe. Mother Nature knows how to breathe in CO2. We've just overwhelmed her. Let nature cool. And thirdly, love carbon. Carbon is not the enemy. We've just simply put it where it doesn't belong. So creating new ways to sequester carbon. Today, it's actually technically feasible, although not economically viable, to pull carbon from the atmosphere and sequester it back into the earth and back into our products. So we are actively working on these 4 dimensions, the 4 pillars of our climate take-back strategy. We did add a 4th, which is lead the industrial re-revolution. You know, there will soon be 9 billion people on this planet, and we need to make sure that we are creating inclusive capitalism to involve all those people with jobs and with hope. Last year, we decided to become a carbon neutral company. So for the 25 years of really hard work and for the last bit of our footprint, we are purchasing offsets to make sure that every product that we sell around the world is carbon neutral. Thank you. The thing that makes me so optimistic about the conversation on climate change is when we release human ingenuity to solve problems, it's amazing what can happen. So in 2016, we launched Climate Takeback. 1 year later, our technical community came back with the first ever carbon negative carpet tile. It was a prototype at the time. 1 year later, in Europe, we launched the backing system for this. We're in the process of making a $60 million investment, so the summer of 2020, we will sell carbon negative carpet tile all around the world. And I will say that if Interface can do this, anyone can do this. And if anyone can do this, everyone should do this. And so I know the world is daunting. The information on climate change can be paralyzing. My challenge to you, to the businesses that you interact with, is devise a plan, lead with optimism. We can make a difference. Did I take more than 12 minutes?
That was wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank Thank you, Jay. That was so inspiring. And Interface really kicked us off in the field of sustainability, proving that the private sector had a role to play in sustainable development. And what's really inspiring is seeing how you're doing that again. You know, there's so much to celebrate, and a lot of what Lisa said, a lot of the progress that we're seeing, but it's still not adding up. And here you are shifting the conversation around what can lead to net positive impacts. And that's what we'll talk about for the next 8 minutes. And I think first, I'm here representing Forum for the Future, and a group of companies and NGOs are all trying to understand what net positive means, coming up with principles and practices. And a big piece of what these companies are doing is trying to understand what they're calling a handprint, what I think I heard you calling kind of a ripple effect, understanding what those are and how they're quantified. The tile that you were talking about is a perfect example of the dream kind of ripple effect. But I would argue Interface is having all these types of effects in other ways. Work that you've done, courageous work in California to lobby against industry associations for progressive policy, among other things. And my first question is, how are you understanding these different ripple effects that you have and how they might add up to the goals that you're setting at?
Well, we don't try to take credit for the ripple effect, but we try to stimulate things. We call it creating a movement. And that's why I go around the world talking about companies taking action. So I think maybe over time we'll figure out a way. I think, you know, really in our hearts, we know that we're having an influence on others. We encourage people to come and visit with us and tell our story. I think the UN Compact is helping to spread the message. So we're in the early days of creating this movement of optimism around sustainability.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Well, I guess I'm curious. Obviously, you know, we've heard being net positive, you can't do it alone. You're out there talking to lots of organizations. Can you tell us a little bit about what collaboration looks like for some of these things? So creating this carbon tile, how do you work with raw material suppliers and exchange consumption? How do you really collaborate across the system?
It's a great question, because when we talk about being carbon negative, it's across our entire supply chain. So that includes our suppliers. So we pioneer new business models. Like, we're out looking for other people's waste to bring in to make our products with. So one of the things we do is we collect used plastics, engineered plastics from around the world, including fishing nets. And so we, you know, developed a whole microeconomy in the Philippines around collecting used fishing nets and bringing them back to make new nylon with. By the way, in the beginning, it cost us more money. I mean, there are years that we spent 25% of our net income back on sustainability initiatives. But we did it for the long term because we think we're building a better business model. So suddenly, recycled or collecting other people's waste is less expensive. So the $60 million investment that we're making to be able to make carbon negative carpet tile actually reduces our cost by $15 million a year. So it's a positive thing.
That's great. Kind of maybe speaking to that business case, how can we get more companies in this net positive movement and really thinking away from just reduction targets to driving this positive outcome and investing behind it?
I think ultimately we're going to have some governance reform. You know, somewhere along the way, capitalism took a step in the wrong direction. You know, where boards of directors believe they're only responsible for one stakeholder, the investors. And I think Ray and his successor, Dan Hendricks, did a great job of recruiting a board of directors who take a perspective that we're here to represent multiple stakeholders. So at Interface, we talk about our customers, our employees, our share owners, but also the environment. And we make financial trade-offs to be able to create value for each one of those stakeholder groups.
And I guess one final question. You clearly have a very progressive board. What do you think those maybe in the room that they might not feel like their boards or the leadership are that progressive? What kind of advice would you lend to them to try to get more on board?
Well, look, I want to come back to a Rayism, which is you have to earn the right to pursue your sense of purpose. So we have taken the earnings of the company from 62 cents earnings per share to $1.49 in the last 4 years. So we've more than doubled the income of the company. You have to be able to do both. But one of the conversations that's critical with the board is time frame. We think over 10 or 20-year time frames. So this $60 million investment that we're making, we could have done it for 30, but we couldn't have had a global impact. So we decided to invest 60 rather than 30.
That's great. Well, thank you.
Yep. Thank you.